Oh, hi. Oh, you just caught me in the middle of reading by the fireside. I love this time of year. No, hi, what's up, y'all? It's Alina back for another video. We are going to be diving into this Gemini full moon. I have a little bit of a different background. I thought it'd be cute to switch it up. As you can see, shipping has begun for the planners because I have already broken one of my press-ons. For any of you who more noticeably felt this recent Mercury retrograde and Saturn retrograde, the fog is lifting. I think the overarching theme for this full moon in Gemini is that the fog is lifting. And I say that for many reasons. With this full moon being in the Mercury-ruled sign of Gemini, we look to Mercury to kind of get a tone for how this full moon will play out. And Mercury, about a week before this full moon, has ended its retrograde, and Saturn has also ended its retrograde. And they are both in trine aspects with one another, which is pretty complementary to be in. And they're both in water signs, Saturn being in Pisces and Mercury being in Scorpio. And with full moons already being considered this very illuminating time, this energetic culmination for us emotionally and intuitively, this being a time of, I like to call full moons this sort of cosmic spotlight, really illuminating what has been working for us, what we can celebrate, how far we've come in a certain area of our lives. By the way, I'm doing all signs reading again, so we will see what area of our lives is being highlighted right now. It can also illuminate things that maybe we might be ready to let go of and sort of lighten the load for the second half of this lunar cycle. So I'm excited to dive into all of that with you. Hello, friends. It's your girl Alina, back for another video. In this one, we are doing an all signs forecast where I go through all 12 zodiac signs, giving you a custom reading for this upcoming Gemini full moon. And rapid fire, quick updates. I listened to y'all and I have decided to pause the Aligned Weekly series and continue with all signs readings. In my previous video, I mentioned that I might pause on all signs readings just for time, and you guys nearly unanimously were like, hey, we really like those all signs readings. Please don't take them out. I don't know. I'm trying to find this balance between like work-life balance for me, fulfilling orders for the astrology planner line that I run, where actually these planners on the site, it's up to 35% off for Black Friday. I'm going to get straight to the point in this video and dive pretty quickly into the all signs reading. But before I do, just on a foundational level, really quick, if you didn't already know, full moons mark the midway point in a lunar cycle. And they only ever happen when the sun and moon form an opposition aspect with one another, where they are on opposite sister zodiac signs from one another. So right now it is Sagittarius season. The sun is in Sagittarius, and at the time of the full moon, the moon will be in Gemini, opposite one another. So inherently with every full moon, it brings a bit of that sort of opposition tension, where we're invited to strike a balance and embrace duality between two different seemingly opposing aspects of our lives. Sagittarius is more of the bird's eye view, philosophical, deep learning type of energy and overarching theme, whereas Gemini is more of the quick-witted conversation, quick jokes, fun facts. And so on a foundational level, under a Gemini full moon, we're all on a collective level being invited to strike a balance between the seemingly superficial or quick gratification and the more Sagittarius energy of delayed gratification, deep research, deep learning, philosophical, spiritual, even political mindsets that require a bit more energy and thought. I also find it interesting that Sagittarius season happens at the start of the holiday season. Sagittarius is also the sign of long distance travel. A lot of people are traveling this time of year here in the Western Hemisphere. All of that to say, I'm going to just jump right into the all signs reading, and after we can go over the journal prompts for this Gemini full moon if you enjoy journaling and reflecting in alignment with these cosmic themes. So you can skip over to that after your reading. Now, if you're not sure what zodiac sign to go to, I always suggest listening to the reading for your rising sign. That will generally be a more encompassing reading of the overarching themes that you might experience a few days leading up to the day of or following this full moon. But if you want to listen to the reading for your moon sign, that can indicate how you might emotionally sort of react to or interact with the things going on around this time. If you want to listen to your sun sign, that's more indicative of things that might happen in your career or in terms of your public image and the world around you, how you see the world and how they view you. Whereas, again, rising sign is more so the actual occurrences or experiences and what specific area of life that might come up for you. Some people like to listen to all three. You do you. With all of that said, let's dive into them. Oh, and I keep on forgetting to mention this. I make a newsletter called Aligned Weekly, where it's essentially a written form of these videos. I send it out usually the day before full moon and new moon, where you get a written horoscope of the full moon or the new moon and a link to this video if you forgot to watch it on YouTube. So be sure to sign up for that. There is a link in the description. Hello to my Aries friends. This Gemini full moon will likely be tied to an area of your life that involves conversation, information exchange, and the more immediate people around you. So think about the people you live with and maybe your neighbors. And it'll also likely involve things like short-term travel. And you might get some news, or you might notice a sort of culmination where there's some type of experience that is kind of added up over time, and you finally are seeing it for what it is. And I think that for some of you, that might involve who you've been having conversations with more often recently. And I think that you might also find a bit more clarity now that Mercury has ended its retrograde in Scorpio. It ended its retrograde in the 8th house for you. And that's an area of life that has more to do with things like the ramifications of relationships. So think about long-term relationships, like your family members or a romantic relationship or long-term friendships, where sometimes you go through things or you have experiences or even conversations where there's a deeper level there, where maybe you're opening up on a deeper level. There's a deeper level of intimacy. There's a deeper level of dependency on one another. Those are the overarching themes within the 8th house. In traditional astrology, it's also associated with death, but it's essentially this house that involves what comes after marriage, what comes after the ending of a relationship or the beginning of a relationship. It's also the house of the money you get. What's that phrase when somebody passes away and they leave you an inheritance? The 8th house is also the house of inheritance. And since Mercury has ended its retrograde in your 8th house and this full moon is happening in your 3rd house, it's really indicating that you might have some more notable conversations that feel a bit more clear, where you finally find the words or somebody else finally finds the words to kind of almost weed through potential Mercury retrograde slumps, slowdowns, or hiccups, and finally find the words to converse, collaborate in a clearer way. And especially with Mercury trining Saturn, which is in Pisces, that'll be in your 12th house, that's also indicating, again, like a bit more clarity, especially when it comes to speaking how you feel. I feel like there's going to be more clear understanding and communication about how you and other people feel a few days leading up to and following this full moon. So pay attention to that. Something that you can do if you feel called to, if you want to sort of align with this Gemini full moon energy, is maybe consider releasing anything that you feel is not conducive to, or maybe you feel like has hindered you in the past, as it pertains to clear communication of how you feel or where you're at. I don't know, something that comes to mind is conflict resolution. But, the 8th house isn't necessarily associated with conflict. Mercury isn't either. Saturn could potentially be, but just proper communication. So I'm rooting for you, my Aries friends. For my Taurus friends, this Gemini full moon will be happening in your 2nd house of income, money, personal finance, but also on a foundational level, your values, whether that is your own self-worth or the value that you place on the physical things maybe in your life or in your home. Think about your car, the means that you need in order to live your life, like transportation or food, water, fundamental resources. And with this being a Gemini full moon, signifying a culmination, it being involved with Mercury that just ended its retrograde, it's indicating for a lot of you, a few days leading up to or following this full moon, you might notice some news or have some experiences that bring your attention to either your finances, or I feel like for some of you, you might have a moment of clarity about a past situation that ties back to your own self-worth. It ties back to your own values, and there's a bit more clarity and understanding around that, where you're not feeling like you're ruminating or trying to decode it all the time, but you're finally connecting the dots or feeling like you can sort of move on. There's a bit of levity that's coming in with this full moon because it's tied back to Mercury ending its retrograde. So roads are sort of clearing up for you in a lot of ways. And So yeah, so with that said, I think that around the time of this full moon, it could help you, my Taurus friends, to maybe look at your finances. You know, it can be a great time to budget before maybe getting gifts for people before the holiday season. It can be, it could actually be very helpful for you, my Taurus friends, to reflect on, you know, maybe do some tax prep. That way you can have a bit more peace of mind going into the holidays. These are some of the things that are coming to mind. But ultimately, if you're thinking of any sort of actions to align with this lunar energy, it can be helpful to reflect on anything that you might be ready to release that maybe you feel like has been holding you back in terms of things like financial literacy or things like even your own self-worth or your own sort of value, like how you value yourself. The other thing that's coming up, I feel like, is because I believe for you, Mercury retrograde ended in Scorpio, which is in your 7th house. So it's also leaning more towards relationships. You know, there's a clarity around relationship dynamics for you and how it connects back to your own self-worth, but maybe even finances. But these relationships could be romantic or platonic. They could involve your actual job as well. So these are the overarching things that could come up for you. Now for my Gemini friends, hello, hello. This Gemini full moon is all about you, baby. It's happening in your 1st house of your identity, the things that you have either initiated now or you've initiated in the past. And now this full moon is sort of this full moon is sort of illuminating the ramifications of those actions, the things that you started, that you came up with the idea of, and you sort of built momentum around. There's going to be a few days leading up to or following this lunation. It's indicating that you might have experiences that point back to that, where you're kind of reflecting on maybe the year that has happened, and you might have experiences that kind of spotlight that, where you're thinking, wow, I've come so far, or wow, like I've actually grown a lot when it comes to these things, or like when it's come to my own identity, my own, things that I've been working on this year. I'm seeing the culmination. You might have some experiences a few days leading up to or following this full moon where you're invited to reflect on those things. But considering that Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, will have ended its retrograde in your 6th house of labor, and this is the labor that you give to others, maybe at work, and the labor that you receive, whether you are hiring people or collaborating with people, it's indicating that this full moon could be a culmination point that really leads to a bit more clarity and ease as it pertains to who you collaborate with and the labor that you give and receive from others. And especially for you, my Gemini friends, you might have felt this Mercury retrograde a bit stronger because Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini for you guys. And if so, you should likely feel the levity that's going to start coming. We are still in the post-shadow period of Mercury retrograde, but it's really any sort of stagnation or hiccups or feeling, or maybe even internally. For example, I have a Gemini stellium, y'all. And so I feel like I didn't have a lot of setbacks necessarily, but it was more so internal stuff that now I'm starting to feel more motivated. I'm starting to see more opportunities that were around me the whole time that I didn't fully, appreciate or realize or lean into before. These are the type of things that you might notice around the time of this full moon. So if you want to align or kind of work with this full moon energy on what, like I said before, full moons are a culmination point. It's a spotlight on what has and hasn't been working for you midway through this lunar journey, but also after 6 months since the Gemini new moon that happened in June of this summer. So think back to this summer even, anything you started, or maybe reflect on how was your own self-image, self-concept. How are you feeling just in your body, 6 months ago? Reflect on your journey from then to now, compare and contrast, and if you feel like you're happy where you are, celebrate that. You don't have to have made a huge win of some kind, I don't know, societally. It's good to just celebrate sometimes. Also, I'm here, man. I'm stable. Okay. That is something to celebrate. On the other side of the coin, if you're reflecting on, things like your own self-image, your self-worth, or things that you started over the last 6 months and you don't feel like, oh, you know what, I could have improved upon this, or, oh, I something happened there. consider doing a full moon ritual where you release anything that doesn't feel aligned with you anymore. The full moon is the optimal time for releasing things that you want to energetically disconnect from and reflect on those things. So that is my reading for you. Hello, hello, my Cancer friends. Under this full moon, it will be oh my God, what am I saying? This full moon will be happening in your 12th house of endings, your 12th house of the subconscious, the imagination, the intuition. But also the 12th house is really this house of blurred lines, blurred lines in terms of even like boundaries and structured action and thinking, It's the last house in the zodiac. So again, it's also about endings. And I find it to be very interesting because, this full moons are this culmination point. And for many of us, if we choose to let go of anything around this time, maybe do a full moon ritual and release something energetically, that's also an ending. So I feel like for you guys, my Cancer friends, this can be a very optimal time. If you've ever been like, oh, like what is a full moon ritual? Or like, what does that entail? Like it's something that could be very helpful to look into for you guys. And considering that Mercury being the ruling planet of Gemini, it ended its retrograde recently. I think that for many of you guys, especially if there's any of you who have been processing a loss, this could be a loss involving literal death, but also a loss of, a relationship or friendships or a change in chapter. Maybe you moved and you're happy to be where you are now, or maybe you changed jobs, but there is a change there. There is a death. There is an ending somewhere. If there's anybody who's processing change right now, this is a really, really great full moon to work with. And considering that Mercury ended its retrograde, it's indicating that there should be a bit more clarity 5 days leading up to 5 days following the beginning of feeling like, okay, I'm connecting the dots here. Like I'm kind of understanding my path forward in some way, or you feel like there's a bit more momentum when it comes to processing something and kind of seeing things for what they are in a way. But I feel like for you guys, an overarching theme is the hidden becomes more clear. And I don't know, I'm really excited for you guys because the other thing too is that Mercury is ending its retrograde in Scorpio in your 5th house of pleasure, of wonder, of creativity, creative expression. And so if you guys have any sort of creative outlets as well, maybe you felt a bit of stagnation there, or maybe there's something involved with that maybe there was some type of slowdown involving Mercury. There should be momentum building back up with that as well. So if you want to do anything to align with this energy, this 12th house full moon energy, really consider anything you might be ready to release that you maybe have noticed in the past doesn't fully feel aligned with you, or maybe your personality or the life that you want to lead or the path forward. Consider those things and consider releasing those things right now. But also, if there's anything, I feel like the flip side to the 12th house as well is that, again, it has to do with illusions. And on one side of the coin, that can be something we align with in terms of our imagination and creating this idea for ourselves and intention setting. But on the other side of the coin, it could also look like escapism and disconnecting from the world to our own detriment. Like we're not really engaging with the world. So I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place, I guess. I don't know. I hope you guys are rolling with me, but I definitely think that if you want to do anything that's in alignment with the energy that's coming up for you right now, there definitely might be an experience that leads you to realize some type of culmination. You kind of reflect on how far you've come in terms of your relationship with your creativity, your relationship with any sort of outlet that you've had. A spotlight that shows how far you've come, that spotlights how far you come in terms of maybe mourning something ending in some way. And it can be really helpful to journal about that. If anything that I'm describing right now, something pops up for you, I invite you to journal about that. I invite you to maybe reflect and sit and consider like what is and isn't working for you. And if you feel like things have been working and you realize I have come so far when it comes to processing these things, when it comes to working on, or not working, but enjoying something, just indulging in something, maybe a hobby, then that's something to celebrate right now. But if you do feel like there's something to release, then consider a full moon ritual. But that is my reading for you, my Cancer friends. Now, hello to my Leo friends. This Gemini full moon will be happening in your 11th house of friendships, community, future thinking. innovation and sort of like progressive steps forward that are maybe a little bit outside of the box. And considering that, considering that this is a Gemini full moon, Mercury, the ruling planet, just ended its retrograde, and it ended its retrograde in your 4th house of your roots, you know, where it is that you hail from, so to speak, and your background. Think about your family history, the things that molded you into who you are. I find it interesting because I think a few days leading up to, or the day of or following this full moon, you'll likely have experiences or maybe even get some news that ultimately can lead you back to realizing how much you have grown when it comes to your social circles, your social skills, and whether that's with your present group or even people from your past in some way. With Mercury ending its retrograde in your 4th house, it's giving like you reaching out to someone from your past, or somebody from your past reaching out to you, and it actually helping to inform better understanding around how you come across to people and how you collaborate with people. On the other side of the coin, I think for some of you, you might notice some overarching themes that involve reflecting on the community or in the environment you're currently in and realizing, oh, I don't know if I fully vibe with this. Like, I think some of you guys might actually kind of realize that you've grown a lot, and that growth might not be in the same path as some of the people that you usually hang out with. And that doesn't mean drop them, get rid of them, boom, wipe your hands of it. You're the main character and you're the most perfect person and they're in the wrong. I don't mean that. No. It could be so many things, right? I don't see your unique natal chart. So I can't tell you for certain that actually it's likely going to be involving you. And because this planet is also in the 11th house, it'll likely be really positive or really negative. But the overarching theme for you, my Leo friends, will likely be around collaborations and friendship, and a spotlight on that area that invites you to pause and reflect on where you stand within that ecosystem and whether or not you want to be there. Now, one side of the coin, if you stop right now and you reflect like, oh, who do I talk to? I'm making sure my mic is on still. If you pause and you reflect on that and you realize and you think, oh yeah, I love all my friends. I love my community right now. I actually feel so grateful and grounded. Now is a great time to celebrate those things. It's so important to celebrate your growth and just, whether it's a big or small, growth or something that you're grateful for, it's so important to do. On the other side of the coin, if I'm describing this and you're like, yeah, I don't know, I just feel maybe not out of place, or I don't feel aligned in this area, or maybe I feel like I need to have a conversation with someone, or we need to work on something, or then this full moon can be a great time to do a full moon ritual where you release things that you feel like are hindering that area of life in the way that you want it to be. And if you notice that the brightness goes up and down, it's because the sun's setting and there's clouds and it's, weather. I have a lot of windows right here. Anyway, okay, moving on. All that to say, I wish you a beautiful Gemini full moon, my Leo friends, and I hope that reading was cohesive. Hello to my Virgo friends. This Gemini full moon will be happening in your 10th house of public image. The 10th house is also about sort of peak visibility. Think about reputation. Think about your outer circle. So not your closer friends, but maybe, the people that you know on Facebook or Instagram, or the people that you work with, again, like that broader sort of reputation and public image. The 10th house is also for that reason, because of those foundational themes that are associated with the 10th house. It's also associated with your career and also ambition, your upward momentum, trajectory, and goals, so to speak, as it pertains to career and how you want to be perceived in the world. Like, what is the legacy that maybe you want to hopefully leave behind? These are all the 10th house themes. Okay, now that we've established that, with this Gemini full moon being in that area of your chart, it's indicating, and this being a full moon, it's peak visibility of the moon as well. It's the energetic peak here. It's really indicating that around this time, you might either find yourself in more social situations, you might find yourself being invited to more things, or you might have some experiences that ultimately invite you to reflect on your reputation, on what is it that I want to do with my life, or how do I want to help others? The other aspect of the 10th house is that it also is, if you look at each house as a stage of life, it's seen as this stage that's about, okay, I've done my learning, I have my experiences in life, I'm a fully grown adult. How do I bestow something that I have learned or experienced in life, and how do I provide that and give that to the world in some way, big or small, to my community, my family? That's another sort of perspective of 10th house. And with this 10th house signifying this peak in visibility, the full moon is signifying a peak in our emotions and intuition. Again, it can, for some of you, you guys might have some notable news involving your career path, involving your jobs, involving, maybe even for some of you, conversations, maybe like, hey, like after Thanksgiving, we were talking and we wanted to let you know, like, we're so proud of how far you've come. Or we were talking and we wanted to let you know, like, oh, we didn't appreciate that argument about politics over Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? Like, it ties back to reputation and public image. And so also, I want to mention that because the ruling planet of Gemini, being Mercury, ended its retrograde in your 3rd house of conversation and socializing, Virgos, get out there. I don't know. Get out there. The roads are opening for you in a lot of ways, especially because of the end of Mercury retrograde. There can be a lot more mental clarity when it comes to properly communicating the message you want to get across. Saturn also ended its retrograde in Pisces, another water sign. And Saturn is all about maturity and discipline. These are overarching themes within our career path and growth. So if you want to focus on your career, I don't know, it's kind of the end of the year. It's the winter, it's getting into the winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. People are trying to slow down. If you don't want to get into that, don't. But I do think, I don't know, it just really seems that there's potential pretty serendipitous experiences that could be had for you if you decide to lean into these 3rd house, Mercury ending its retrograde. There being open roads for you, energy of socializing, networking, and letting yourself be seen. Sorry, it cut off. But I think that key conversations will definitely be something that could end up shaping the direction you take for the next few months or for around the time of this full moon. So really pay attention to conversations, maybe even social invitations. Maybe you're the one inviting people to something, but I really think something serendipitous is in the works for you, my Virgo friends. I'm excited for you. Hello to my Libra friends. Welcome in. This full moon in Gemini will be happening in your 9th house of spiritual beliefs, even political beliefs, but think about your relationship with your philosophical views, maybe your religious views, even political views. Think about worldview, how you view and your personal beliefs of the world. It's also the house of all things expansion, and that's a part of why it's tied to long distance travel. So some of you might be traveling right now. Some of you might have thought, I don't even know if this trip is going to happen. And you might end up being pleasantly surprised that roads are opening, things are clearing up. And I say that because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury just ended its retrograde in your 2nd house of values, money, and self-image, and personal self-value, self-love, and your income, your personal income. So think of the money that you make, that you personally make, right? That comes from the things that you do. And so all of that to say, it's really indicating 5 days leading up to, day of, 5 days following this Gemini full moon, you might have some experiences that end up inviting you to reflect on or end up spotlighting your relationship with your spiritual beliefs and your fundamental values. Like, on a foundational level, what is it that you believe? What is it that you stand for? What is it that you value in a material sense? And your more immediate resources, Libras. For some of you, and ultimately, because Mercury is forming a complementary trine aspect with both Saturn, which also ended its retrograde, but also Jupiter, one of the luckiest planets, actually the luckiest planet in our solar system, it's indicating that these experiences that these experiences or even news that you might get that are tied back to your fundamental beliefs, they could be something pretty positive or really constructive, even if it's challenging. You end up coming out on it on the other side better for it in some way. But what's coming to mind is, for some of you, you might have experiences where you're afraid for a moment, or you get some news and you're almost like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to pray right now. And you pray and you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I hadn't prayed in this long, or wow, like I hadn't, you reconnect with something, or like your connection with your belief systems or values, you revisit it, so to speak. And so all of that to say, I think that this can be really good for you. I think that for some of you, you might feel excited to almost like return to a spiritual or religious belief, or like some type of practice within it. I think for some of you, it might be meditation or prayer or ancestral veneration, like honoring and, paying reverence to people who have passed away that you love, or maybe going back to church. But there's something there. There's something involving that will likely come up for you guys. And considering that the full moon is considered a culmination point, it's indicating that it'll be a time where you reflect and you see how far you've come in that area of your life. For some of you on one side of the coin, it could be like, wow, I'm realizing that I've really grown in my self-concept, in my own self-image, in my relationship with my belief systems and with my values. Like I feel like I'm actually living more in alignment with my values. Like I don't know why this is coming to mind, but I feel like for some of you have been budgeting this year, like budgeting, or even like practicing abstinence, like abstaining from maybe drinking or, I don't know, intimacy or something. Like you've been working on your self-control in some way. And for some of you on one side of the coin, you might have some experiences leading up to this full moon or following it where you realize like, oh, I've actually come pretty far there. I'm really proud of myself. And if so, you should celebrate that. On the other side of the coin, for some of you, you might have those things spotlighted and you realize that maybe you aren't where you want to be, or you might have experiences that realize a specific thing that actually has been holding you back or weighing you down, that you might feel ready to release, let go of, to have a lighter load, to align yourself with your values, to live more in alignment with those things. But either way, these are the overarching themes for you, my Libra friends. And if you want to, have something that you're doing around this time that is aligned with this energy, sort of working with this energy, you can do a full moon ritual where you release anything that you feel like no longer serves you as it pertains to these themes or Gemini themes. And as the light wanes from the surface of the moon, in astrology, it's believed that the energetic ties to you and those things can also wane along with it. But I personally believe, as an astrologer, that you also need to take aligned steps. So it's not just setting the intention and forgetting it. Or you can just, I feel like for many of you, some type of activity where you're kind of drawing your energy back to yourself, or if you are going out and being in action, being in community where they share similar perspectives in some way. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just like, I want to give you as much as possible, but I think that those are the overarching things that you can expect and the ways that you can align with that energy. And I'm wishing you a beautiful full moon, my Libra friends, and I will see you at the journal prompt section after this. My Scorpios, hello, hello. This Gemini full moon is happening in your 8th house of intimacy, of trust, of shared resources. The 8th house is also the house of inheritance. And essentially, because the 8th house follows the 7th house, which in traditional astrology is the house of like marriage and sort of contracts, the 8th house is sort of the ramifications of that. So it's all about what happens after, a relationship begins or ends in some way. So think about, again, like inheritance or, I don't know, what I'm thinking of is, what is it, alimony after a divorce, or maybe you had some type of contract in the past with others and you're receiving something from that. But ultimately, the 8th house also, from a financial perspective, is also the house of other people's money. And so if you're somebody who runs a business, you dabble in 8th house themes of other people's money, other people buying something and giving you money or supporting you in some way. All of that to say, with there being a full moon in Gemini in your 8th house, it's indicating a culmination point for some of you a few days leading up to or following this full moon. You might have some experiences that involve contracts, or some experiences that involve intimacy or even like codependence, and there being a culmination point there. For some of you, the culmination point might be a breakup. For some of you, the culmination point, or you like where you kind of see things for what they are, so to speak, It could also be you deepening your intimacy and connection and trust with someone. But it's all about shared energy, shared resources, shared love emotionally, and the ramifications of that. So it could, be codependency. It could also be a deepening in trust in collaborative spaces, But all of that to say, with there being a full moon there, it being in Gemini, and considering also Gemini's ruling planet, which is Mercury, just ended its retrograde in your first house in Scorpio, if you're a Scorpio rising. Considering that, I think that around the time of this full moon, anything that involves these 8th house themes, a lot of it is going to lend itself to better momentum when it comes to your relationship with yourself, with your self-image, with anything that you've been trying to initiate. I feel like some of you have been trying to kickstart something. Maybe it's like kickstart a relationship, going on dates. Maybe it's like kickstarting a professional relationship through a contract, trying to negotiate things. Or, a good example is, I don't know. Well, actually, that's not a good example. I don't know how many people do that. I was thinking about like two people, two groups of people trying to buy a house. They're trying to go in on something like, oh, if we all put money into this, then we'll get that. Around the time of this full moon, you might finally figure it out. Or the full moon could signify this upward momentum where you're actually getting things done. And again, I say that because Mercury is in your first house. It ended its retrograde, and that's signifying more mercurial clarity as it pertains to first house themes of your self-image and the things that you initiate, the things that you're trying to get going. And so with Mercury having been retrograde in Scorpio in that first house, now that it has ended its retrograde, it can indicate that you're creating more momentum in that area. You can finally, you might be looking around and realizing that there's actually a lot more opportunities or ways around a potential obstacle than you realized before. Or those solutions might pop up more around the time of this full moon or following it. But all of that to say, if you want to do anything to align with this Gemini full moon energy, I think that for you guys, my Scorpio friends, it could be really helpful to pause, journal, maybe converse with others, or maybe through any sort of creative outlet, pause to process your relationship with boundaries as it pertains to your closer or longer term relationships. Because, oh my gosh, this is one other thing that could happen for some of you guys. I don't know, it just came to mind, but I feel like some of you guys might be dealing with like people from your past that maybe you grew up with or family that have seen you in one way for so long and you're so frustrated. That's like the human experience, right? It's like you grow, maybe you move out or you move out of your hometown and you actually grow in a different way. You go back to that hometown for the holidays or for whatever. And for some reason, you're not really vibing with somebody from your past. And an element of it is that they're treating you as if you are the younger version of yourself, whether it's like not with as much respect or they think you're going to behave a certain way and you don't do that anymore, that type of thing. But I think that if any of that resonates, or even if it doesn't, it could be helpful to journal, reflect, process where you stand in terms of your boundaries, in terms of energy, financially with other people. And because this is a full moon, it could be signifying how far you've come in that area. But on the other side of the coin, it could be spotlighting where improvements could be made. And that leads me to the other thing you can do, which is a full moon ritual, where you focus on releasing anything that you feel like is hindering your path forward as it pertains to these 8th house themes of shared resources and interdependence with others in relationships or contracts. But that is my reading for you, my Scorpio friends. I hope that was cohesive and coherent. And I'll see you in the journaling section next. Peace. Hello to my Sagittarius friends. Hello. This Gemini full moon is happening in your 7th house of relationships, of romance, of aesthetics. But also the 7th house is a house of justice, equitability, and balance. And with this being a full moon signifying the culmination or the buildup of something, I think that what immediately came to mind for some of you is you might have some experiences a few days leading up to or following this full moon that have to do with justice or balance in some way. I think that for some of you guys, especially during the Saturn and Mercury retrograde, both of which just ended, you might have felt a bit of frustration or, I don't know, just feeling like you can't let go of something, maybe holding a grudge, or it's like not being able to process something ending, I feel like, I don't know. But ultimately, what I'm getting at is around the time of this full moon, it might feel a bit easier for you to articulate and process and connect the dots as it pertains to your relationship dynamics. And finally have the words, like put the words to troubleshooting something, or finally have the words to express your love, or just kind of connecting the dots in some way. I think that for some of you guys, there might have been, not all of you, but some of you guys might have had some stagnation with relationships in some way, or like hiccups or arguments. And as we move into the second half of this lunar cycle, and really the rest of the year, now that especially Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, the planet of communication, is not retrograde anymore. I think that you're going to have very, very clear and productive, a lot more productive conversations. And I'm excited for you. I also say that because Mercury ended its retrograde in Scorpio, which is in your 12th house of endings and of sort of letting go and illusions, and imagination. And with it having been retrograde in that area of life, it really indicates confusion, not fully understanding or communicating things clearly, or somebody else not understanding you, or maybe not being able to let go of something, whether it's like, again, holding a grudge or letting go of things changing. Like things might be changing for some of you in your relationships. But with this full moon, with Mercury ending its retrograde, Saturn ending its retrograde, it's signifying this upward momentum when it comes to clearing things up. Whether it's clearing things up in your relationships, in the conversations within your relationships. And yeah, so I'm really excited for you. I think that'll be really good. And if you want to do anything to align with this energy, especially if there's anything that came up as I was describing these things that you're like, oh yep, I get that. Consider doing a full moon ritual where you're focusing on releasing those things that you're ready to let go of, that you feel like might be weighing you down. What you're releasing, it could be releasing, self-image things. It could be releasing these relationship dynamics. Basically being able to acknowledge it is the first step. But I'm definitely the type of astrologer to say it's not about setting the intention and forgetting it. It's also about taking aligned steps. So that's important to do as well. And if I described all of these things and you were like, I feel really good in the areas of life that involve endings, letting go of things, I feel really good in terms of my relationships, you are the type of person that around the time of this full moon, you might have experiences that spotlight how far you've come in your growth, in your maturity with your closer, more intimate relationships, whether they are romantic or platonic, your ability to collaborate, those, even justice, finally getting the results on a case, something legal going on. This is the time to celebrate, man. You got to celebrate these things, and I hope you do. But that is my reading for you, my Sagittarius friends. I will see you at the journal prompts after this. Peace. Hello to my Capricorn friends. This full moon in Gemini, this culmination point, is really signifying for you a spotlight on how far you've come, for better or worse, really reaping what you have sown when it comes to the labor that you have put out in the world and that you receive, whether it's like the labor that you put out for your work, how hard you've worked, or the labor that you receive from hiring other people. And as it pertains to, again, like that energy that you give and receive from others when it comes to like your daily sort of routines and structure. And another element of, and for context, the full moon is happening in your sixth house. The sixth house is also seen as this house of bodily health and even potential illness. And I feel like for you guys, this could signify a few days leading up to and following this full moon, you might get results literally as it pertains to your health. Like you might get some news that could be good news, that could potentially be bad news as it pertains to your health. Or you also might, so because the full moon is in Gemini ruled by Mercury, Mercury just ended its retrograde in your 11th house of collaboration and of community. And so I feel like this full moon is signifying this upward momentum, this sort of like clearing up of the roads as it pertains to the mercurial energy around who you're collaborating with. And because the 11th house is collaboration, 6th house is labor that you give and receive, this is really pointing to the work that you do. Not necessarily your career path and, ambition, but more so the actual, like, what do you do at work? What do the other people that you're collaborating with, what do they do at work? Are you at home? Are you the caregiver? Are you the person who does everything in the house? What does that actual physical labor look like for you? It's signifying a culmination in terms of a spotlight on where you're at when it comes to your work-life balance, your labor life balance, the balance between the energy you give and receive. This can be a really great time to do a full moon ritual and release anything that you feel like is hindering your ability to have good work-life balance, whether that is work outside of the house or work within the house as somebody who's doing something from home. Maybe that's work as in the labor that you're putting in to improve your actual physical health. What work have you been doing and what are you getting back from that? What are the results? All of that to say, full moon ritual as it pertains to your work-life balance, releasing things that might be slowing you down. Maybe you're realizing you might have an experience around this time that spotlights, I'm a bit of a workaholic. I maybe need to set more boundaries around when I am actually available to do this labor for somebody, to do these favors for people. This could be volunteer work. The holidays are here. Everybody's asking if you want to do overtime. Maybe it's an opportunity for me to practice a bit of courage and set a boundary, see what happens, test the waters. Those are the type of things that you could do. On the other side of the coin, I could be describing all these things. And if you're the type of person who's like, I actually have improved my health so much this year, over the last 6 months since the previous Gemini new moon, I've actually really improved my collaboration and my communication skills with the people that I work with. Now's a great time to celebrate those things. You might actually have experiences that spotlight how far you've come in that area. So that is my reading for you, my Capricorn friends. I'm excited for you, and I will see you at the end of the journal prompts. Peace. Hello to my Aquarius friends. I'm just making sure my mic is on. This Gemini full moon will be happening in your 5th house of joy, of romance, of creativity, of wonder. When was the last time you went somewhere or you talked to someone and you just left and you were like, that is so cool. Like your mind is racing with even more ideas. Like you feel inspired or you just feel a bit more grounded. There's a bit more levity or clarity that follows from that action. That could be a creative outlet for you. That could be maybe what comes to mind for me is like going to see a live theatrical production. My mind races after something like that because I'm like, oh my gosh, who are these actors? Wow, that guy did so well. Oh my goodness, was that improv right there? Like that's just me, right? But think of those things. With there being a Gemini full moon in your 5th house, it's indicating this uptick. You might have some experiences where you feel inspired. You feel something is awakened within you, so to speak. That could literally look like you finally have time to decorate your house for the holidays and it elicits something in you that feels so joyous and grounded in some way. Or, like I said, like it could be a creative outlet. It could be singing, painting, anything. It could be journaling and you feel like you finally connected the dots on something. But considering also that Mercury ended its retrograde in Scorpio in your 10th house of reputation, visibility, and career, it's really interesting. It's basically indicating this full moon marks a culmination point for you, but also the beginning of the sort of clearing of the roads when it comes to sort of momentum around anything you might have been working on in terms of your career, in terms of your ambition, but also in terms of your creativity, y'all. And I know some of y'all have side projects or it's your main job and it involves something that you are deeply passionate about. That's the 5th house, something that you have created or are creating. This is a very auspicious full moon for you, my Aquarius friends, for that reason. I also think that in terms of romance, you might need a fan, okay? Because the 5th house is, again, like the house of romance as well. 10th house is of visibility. People might be looking at you in a different light. They might feel inspired by you, or they might be looking at you with googly eyes in some way. All of that to say, it's really indicating a very auspicious window of time where you have some experiences that either elicit inspiration, you inspire somebody else, but there's clearer roads when it comes to your career path, when it comes to maybe reaching out to people, networking, again, like visibility, maybe applying for a job, doing an interview, the way that you are being viewed right now, the way that the world is shaping up in a way because of this full moon is ultimately leaning in a positive light in a lot of ways for you. So I'm excited for you, my Aquarius friends. If you want to do anything to align with this Aquarius or this, if you want to do anything to align with this Gemini full moon, put yourself out there. I don't know. Like Mercury and Saturn went direct they're ending their retrogrades. We're in the post-shadow period, yes, but their retrogrades are done. They ended about a week before this full moon. And so any sort of stagnation, whether it's outwardly, you've been trying to do something and there seems to be obstacles, or inwardly, you haven't been feeling motivated, or you've been feeling tired, or you've been distracted, or a lot is on your plate. Around this time, like, things could be clearing up for you in a lot of ways in these areas of life that I described. And so, yeah, put yourself out there if you feel like it. If I'm describing all this stuff and you're like, I love my job, oh my gosh, I love my creative outlet. Here's my piano right here. It's like, yo, I have been learning these Christmas songs, these Christmas jingles. I am on a roll. I'm in a flow state. Then now's the time to celebrate those things. But if I describe those things and you're like, no, I have no opportunity, I have no time, I have no energy to do those things, I don't see a path forward with that, or you feel like there's something hindering your ability to live in alignment with those creative things that might have popped up as I described all that, or even with your career, consider doing a full moon ritual where you sit down and you get clear on maybe anything that might be hindering your ability to live in alignment with what you want, and release those things energetically, dive deeper into full moon rituals. I think that could be helpful for you. But that's my reading for you, my Aquarius friends. I am wishing you a beautiful Gemini full moon, and I will see you at the journal prompts. Peace. Hello, hello, my Pisces friends. Hello, hello to my Pisces friends. My Pisces friends. They are so cute. They are so cute. I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna save y'all. What to do, y'all? What's up, y'all? This Gemini full moon is happening in your first house of your roots, where you come from. Think about the experiences in your life that have made you who you are today. That is the traditional astrology perspective of the fourth house, and that's why oftentimes the fourth house is associated with home life, with your family, with your parents, things like that, because those are all the things that usually for most people are a part of our formative years, right? All of that to say, on the other side of the coin, the fourth house is also about your immediate home life, your immediate environment. Think of like your sanctuary, think about your shelter. All of that to say, with this being a Gemini full moon in that area of life, it's signifying a culmination point in that area of life where you might have experiences a few days leading up to or following this full moon, where ultimately the experiences lead you back to realizing how far you've come from your past, how far you've grown, for better or for worse. Full moons on a fundamental level are this energetic culmination point emotionally and intuitively, and it's about reaping what we have sown in some way. And that's why you see people doing full moon rituals where they release something that might be hindering them, where they kind of see the fruits of their labor and maybe they love it and they're celebrating. Full moons are the time to celebrate. It's a culmination, celebrating a win, maturity of how far you've come. On the other side of the coin, they might look around and reaping what they have sown and realize, oh, I don't really love this. And that's why they release things around this time. But all of that to say, another piece of context that I want to mention is Mercury being the ruling planet of Gemini will have ended its retrograde in Scorpio in your 9th house of higher learning, long distance travel, and spiritual beliefs. And I find it really interesting because the 4th house is about your past, and that could be your past involving your literal lineage, your family line, but also ancestors. 9th house involves spiritual beliefs. Mercury ended its retrograde in your 9th house, indicating a sort of clearing of the path, so to speak. There's a bit of clarity. There's more open roads when it comes to long distance travel, whether planning for that, or also your relationship with religion, or ritual, or your connection with the next dimension, so to speak, even politics. Think about philosophical views. I think that for some of you, my Pisces friends, you might dive deeper into your spiritual practices as it pertains to your ancestry, as it pertains, that's getting really granular. I think on a broader level, for many of you Pisces, you might have some experiences where you're having more conversations with your family or with people from your past. That could, for some of you, I think a small amount of you, you might, I don't know, get into one of those Instagram sessions or Facebook sessions where you're like, where is that one classmate? Oh, there they are. Oh my gosh, they're a lawyer now. Wow. And then it pushes you into this broader 9th house sort of perspective and world of oh my gosh, this is a path they took in life. This is a path I took in life. Wow, this broader sort of perspective of my life and theirs, and where we all sit in on this small speck of rock in the middle of the of the space. Anyway, I hope you understand what I'm getting at. But my point is that a few days leading up to or following this full moon, you might have some overarching experiences that tie back to family. You might get some family news, some family chatter, conversation. You might learn it through the internet, Gemini, Mercury, it all pertains to the internet. But ultimately, you're being invited to reflect on how far you've come from your past, for better or worse. And if you want to do anything that's sort of working with this Gemini full moon energy, it could be really helpful to reflect on how far you've come in a positive way and celebrate that, whether these are big or small wins. For example, with me, I'm a Pisces rising. What to do? Hello, my siblings, my fellow rising sign. Anyway, so for me, an example is I have come so far with people pleasing and with boundary setting and with being really a lot more strict, I guess, with the people that I let into my inner circle. And I've noticed recently how that's really improved my mental health. And for some of you, that could tie back to your own Saturn return as well, because if you have Saturn natally in your natal chart, if Saturn is in Pisces, that it could be you as well. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the overarching themes here. You might have some experiences that involve people from your past, people from your more formative years, people who inspire you and help to form who you're becoming today. And ultimately, it's tying back to reflecting on those things, even on a philosophical and spiritual level for some of you. I don't know why. This is just more of an intuitive thing. I think for some of you, these experiences that are tied back to people from your past and spiritual beliefs, some of you might be working through the loss of someone. And especially because Mercury has ended its retrograde recently, and this could be through death or just the loss of someone, you're not talking to them anymore. Thanks to Mercury ending its retrograde in your 9th house of philosophical and like sort of a bird's eye view aspect of your life. And then also the full moon being in your 4th house of those relationships, the sort of inner circle and people from your past. I think that, Saturn ending its retrograde there, full moon being sort of a cosmic spotlight illuminating things for you. I think that for some of you, you might have some aha moments or connecting the dots in some way where it's the beginning of a chapter where you're starting to better process things. Like you finally feel like you have the capacity to kind of look at that thing or sit with that feeling that maybe was harder for you. But I don't know why I just wanted to say that. But anyway, that wraps up my reading for you, my Pisces friends. I'll see you in a millisecond for the journal prompts. Hello, everybody. Welcome into these Gemini full moon journal prompts. If you have your Auraline astrology planner, you can flip over to November's dedicated Gemini full moon journaling page, and you can write it out here. You can, process everything, journal it there. But if you don't have it, you can just use a notebook as well, obviously. The first prompt that I have for you is, what truth or insight has this full moon brought into clearer focus for you? It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to the full moon if you're watching it earlier. I feel like a lot of us are getting clear insights, or we're kind of realizing things that maybe have always been around us because Mercury and Saturn have ended their retrograde and this Gemini full moon that's tied back to Mercury is happening. So have there been any aha moments? Have you felt like you've been connecting the dots on something within the last week or so? Second question, where are you being asked to align your words with your actions? So walking the walk, not just talking the talk, especially as it pertains to your relationships. And finally, is there anything that you want to celebrate under this full moon, or anything that you're ready to release under this full moon? Definitely journal that, but I would love if you commented that actually. Comment anything that you want to celebrate right now. All right, y'all, that concludes this video and the journal prompts. I just want to remind you, it's up to 35% off site-wide on all of the astrology planners. I started shipping them out. I got the inventory, so pre-orders are being shipped out. I'm on TikTok Shop now, which is really cool. I personally am neurospicy, and I really benefit from having things very visible and up on a wall. If I close the book, sometimes I completely forget, and if you're that type of person, the wall calendars are there, and they're even better priced. Oh, this is the last thing. Oh my gosh, if you're still watching, Okay, important. When you get your planner in the mail, please, if you want to, I would love, like, it would mean so much if you tagged me in like a story or a reel on Instagram, either tag me or the Auraline Instagram page. Everything is linked in my link tree. Being able to share that you guys are enjoying it, it just really helps the business. I'm gonna be straight up. It helps the business to show, oh yeah, other people are enjoying it. I don't know. And also, I just really love when people unbox things. It's just really cool to see that you guys are finally getting your planner that will be your bestie for the entire year of 2026. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by commenting 3 Gemini emojis, or commenting anything that you're celebrating right now, any sort of culmination point that's in alignment with the themes from your personal reading or the overarching Gemini full moon themes. What can we celebrate? How can we cheer you on? And yeah, okay, that's it. All right, I'll see y'all in the next one. I'm sending you my love. I'm wishing you happy holidays, and that's it. I will leave you with my favorite quote, and that is, be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.